Hi, I'm Briana Hetherington.
I'm Jenn Hatcher.
And I'm Kat Gottlieb.
Welcome to the Conscious Creator Community Podcast. We are over the moon excited to share our wisdom, experiences, and valuable insights to becoming the best version of yourself. Can I ask you something? Have you ever felt like you're genuinely trying to become a better version of yourself, but you still feel stuck? You're listening to the podcast, reading all the books, following the experts. Maybe you've even started therapy. Maybe you bought the journal, downloaded the app, signed up for the course. You're doing all the things people say should help. So why do you still feel anxious? Why do the same habits keep showing up? Why do the same relationship patterns keep repeating? If you ever wondered, I'm trying so hard, why doesn't anything actually feel different? Today's conversation is for you.
That question makes my heart hurt because I feel like so many people can relate to it, right? Most of us aren't sitting around doing nothing. We're trying, sometimes desperately trying anything and everything for change. We're learning, we're investing in ourselves. We're going to the gym for the first time in a long time, right? So when life still feels hard, it's easy to assume something must be wrong with us.
Or, and maybe think about this, our dear listeners, maybe we've simply confused acquiring knowledge with the actual process of transformation.
Ooh, and that's the idea we want to wrestle with today. What if the thing we believe is moving us forward is sometimes keeping us comfortably in the same place?
Ooh, friends, buckle up because this is an amazing episode coming today. And welcome back to the Conscious Creator Community Podcast. I'm Jenn Hatcher, a mom, super busy mom, fintech founder, Win Now Mastermind co-founder, and lifelong student of trying to understand why we do what we do. I built businesses, have two brilliant, feisty daughters who give me gray hair, and I've spent enough time trying to understand my own patterns to know that self-awareness is equal parts deep work, brutal honesty, and being able to laugh when you catch yourself doing the exact same thing you've sworn you've outgrown.
And I am Kat Gottlieb, author, artist, and lifetime entrepreneur who has generated generational wealth. And I am a master of the law of attraction because I needed to figure out my own messes in life and get through them. So been there, done that, and looking forward to helping everybody else get there too.
100%. And I'm Briana Hetherington, founder of Calm Water Bath, Altruistic Advisory, co-founder of the Win Now Network and Finish Line Strategies, along with a child author and meditation and mentor and mindset coach. We all bring a wealth of knowledge, insight, and experience to this podcast. So today, what we're talking about feels a little ironic. We're asking you to listen to a podcast about whether consuming more information is always helping us grow.
So don't turn us off quite yet. We're definitely not saying books, podcasts, or therapy are not helpful. Honestly, they have all changed my life. But today we're asking a different question. Why do some ideas transform us while hundreds of others simply pass through us?
Here's something that completely changed how I think about personal growth. Your brain doesn't reward you for changing. it rewards you for anticipating change. Think about the excitement of buying a new planner or signing up for the gym, ordering the books that someone recommended. But before you change a single habit, your brain gives you a little dopamine hit because it loves the possibility of becoming someone new. Sometimes that feeling is so satisfying, it tricks us into believing we've already made progress. Healing is not another productivity project. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop striving long enough to become present with ourselves. Research from neuroscience shows that the brain's default mode network, the DMT, becomes active during quiet, wakeful rest. While this network has sometimes been associated with mind wandering, it also plays an important role in memory, integrating our experiences, self-reflection, and making meaning from what we learn. Studies on wakeful rest suggest that brief periods without additional input can help consolidate memories and support learning rather than represent doing nothing.
Can I tell you where this connects for me? When I was in the thick of it, single mom, going through gnarly divorce, on an island by myself, praying for any glimmer of light, I was also in a 100% commission sales role. So literally, sometimes it felt like I was losing money on drives when sales weren't made. You get the picture. But at each weeknight, I prepped my fancy planner I made lists to execute on the next day, the cold calls, the emails, the visits to make, but all the preparation and even executing the actions wasn't yielding the results the way I wanted and quite honestly needed. And I kept pushing harder and harder and trying to do more and staying awake later at night and trying to just like go into overdrive. And, it wasn't connecting, and it was beyond frustrating because I know I'm not the only person who has been down this road.
Ooh, Jen,
Mhm.
I think so many of us have lived some version of that story. We mistake preparation for participation. We organize, we highlight, we buy the planner, we color code the calendar. None of those things are wrong, but there comes a moment when growth quietly asks, will you stop preparing long enough to actually live this? And I think that's one of the greatest invitation life gives us, because transformation doesn't usually happen while we're collecting all the information. It happens while we're washing the dishes, sitting quietly in the car, walking without our headphones, having the difficult conversations, and choosing patience when everything inside us wants to react. Those ordinary moments become extraordinary because they're where the brain actually begins wiring a new experience. We don't become someone different because we learn something. We become someone different because we practiced something long enough for it to become part of who we are. And if we're not careful, we can become addicted to preparing for a different life instead of living one.
Yeah, a way I think that our listeners can understand this concept is the analogy of growing a garden. So imagine you're planting a seed and you're so excited about it that the next morning you go out to your garden and you dig it up just to see if it's growing. And, you keep doing that every single day. Is it sprouting? Is it growing? And then when it doesn't seem to be doing anything, you say, okay, fine, I got to plant a different seed. and you put another one in the ground, and you keep doing that. And then you say, okay, they're not growing. Okay, I got to buy a gardening book. And eventually your garden is just a bunch of holes and nothing has bared fruit because nothing has had the time and the simple nourishment to take root. That's what we're doing when we consume too much personal development than what we can implement into our psyche, our belief systems, and lifestyle. You got to let that stuff just grow naturally.
Ooh, patience is something I'm not good at historically, working on
Same.
it, lifelong
Same.
virtue. But Kat, that you explained that so well. Was there a moment in your life when you realized you were doing exactly that?
Yes. Just like you, Jen, patience is a virtue that is just out of my reach most of my life. I think most of us have started, here's one. I've been working on my health fitness. Look at that gun. This year. So anyway, think about a new health routine. So I've been doing heavy weightlifting and resistance training. And along this time frame, I've been doing it this year. That's my big goal for the year. There's a ton of videos to watch, even on social media, but you go on YouTube here and they will show you a million different moves, and there's a million different methods on how you should be doing this. And recently, I've been following Dr. Stacy Sims, who's this amazing scientist, and she's begun to do research fitness for females. Finally, she's the expert who coined the phrase, women are not small men, which, hello, it just took us until the 2000s to realize that. But anyway, sorry, I digress. Along the way of learning how to exercise, I could easily get buried in data, routines, all these different methods. Some people say do this. Other people say absolutely do not do this, do this. And it can become overwhelming and also very, very conflicting. So what I have learned along the way, and what I would recommend for anybody starting a new routine in life, just begin. Just start. Get to the gym 3 days a week. In my analogy of what I'm explaining, moving, lifting, I started small and humble by just following some routines and okay, I just got to get my muscles moving. And the key to transformation when you're starting over and new, I personally believe, or I have discovered in my life, is that consistency is the key. All that information overload really is not going to grow my muscles. The simple act of lifting weights is the trick. So action, my friends, is the real key to transformation. Education, stacking onto your skill set, can follow.
Okay, I'm going to call that out again, Kat, because you said it so eloquently and it's so critical. Action and consistent action, friends, is the key. I'm going to throw in a Jim Rohn quote here because who doesn't love a Jim Rohn quote? But he has a quote that says, an apple a day is what you need. If you eat 30 apples on the last day of the month, you're not going to get the results you want. It's about the consistency. So this goes completely with this concept of anybody can research anything, but maybe you're just too overwhelmed by too many good ideas and missing that consistency. And then what happens is often people feel like they're behind and they feel like they're failing. So what do? We try to add more in. And here's the skinny. You don't need another 5-step morning routine. I mean, you may need adjustments, but what you need right now is to live with the one you actually chose. And Bree, you've spent a lot of time studying this. Do you ever find yourself wishing people understood this concept sooner?
Yes, every single day, Jen, because one of the biggest misconceptions I see is that people think they need more information all of the time. Most of us, we really simply don't. If you ask someone, should you sleep more? They already know, yes, I need to sleep more. Should they move their body more? Yes, they know. Should you set your boundaries? Yes, they know. And the problem usually isn't a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of repetition, of consistency, like you and Kat are saying. That's why the research on deliberate practice is so fascinating to me. Whether researchers are studying Olympic athletes, concert pianists, surgeons, or entrepreneurs, the conclusion keeps showing up. Improvement doesn't come from learning something once. It comes from practicing it consistently. And neuroscience says the exact same thing. There's a phrase that's been around literally since the 1940s of Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. What you are consuming daily, listening to, watching, eating, drinking, surrounding yourself with, every time you practice a behavior, that neural pathway becomes just a little bit stronger. Reading about confidence doesn't strengthen your confidence. Having difficult conversations strengthens your confidence. Reading about boundaries doesn't build boundaries. Setting boundaries does, and being consistent with those boundaries and honoring them. Reading about courage doesn't make you courageous. Acting courageously and being vulnerable does. So I had a season where I believed every answer exists somewhere outside of me. I was constantly just reading, listening to different podcasts, learning from incredible mentors. And every morning started with a new podcast or another book or another course or another certification or another notebook filled with countless ideas. And I remember sitting in complete exhaustion one evening and realizing I wasn't lacking wisdom. I was lacking stillness. I had become so committed to becoming the best version of myself that I had forgotten how to simply be myself. So I started creating small moments of silence. 10 minutes, that was all. And I knew I could commit to that. No phone, no music, no journal, just sitting, listening to the birds, being present with my breath. And at first, this was completely uncomfortable for me because the mind wanted to wander and solve problems, plan for tomorrow, fix something else, improve something else. But eventually, something beautiful happened. I stopped hearing everyone else's voice, and I started to recognize my own. That changed everything for me. Because I realized wisdom isn't always something we acquire. Sometimes it's something we uncover when the noise finally becomes quiet, which led me to meditation as a daily practice, changing my life from the inside out. Taking a simple walk in nature has become a non-negotiable, and calming my nervous system to recenter and align. So I also think we need to challenge something that's become very popular in personal development. Somewhere along the way, growth became another competition. More books, more habits, more routines, more optimization, more productivity. But nature doesn't grow that way. Trees don't apologize for changing seasons and having winter. Oceans don't rush their tides. Even our own nervous system was designed with the rhythms of activation and restoration. We are the only species trying to optimize every waking moment. Sometimes healing isn't about asking us to do more. Sometimes it's about asking us to stop interpreting the wisdom that is already trying to emerge. Presence isn't the absence of growth. Presence may actually be where the deepest growth happens. And if there's one thing I hope you remember from today, it's that you do not have to earn your worth by constantly becoming someone new. There is absolutely nothing wrong with learning. Learning expands us. But don't become so busy chasing the next version of you that you never fully meet the person sitting here and now today. Sometimes the next breakthrough isn't hidden inside another podcast, another book, another expert. Sometimes it's waiting inside 10 minutes with yourself in stillness. Because awareness begins with information, but transformation happens the moment we're willing to become fully present with what we already know.
Ooh, there is a lot there to digest, period. I 100% agree with the silence and the 10 minutes and just starting small because it does feel uncomfortable at first, but then you really dive into it. And another example you gave, Bri, or that you mentioned that really hit me was with boundaries, right? Like saying you have boundaries isn't the same thing as holding yourself and others to boundaries. And that's really hard sometimes, especially when you're starting something new. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first until we practice it over and over and over. And those new pathways become worn down and those neurons feel really good holding boundaries. You know, on a lighter note, I want to note I have absolutely done what you've mentioned. You know, I bought the books, I've read them voraciously, love reading. I've highlighted it, I've made the notes in the margins, I've felt the excitement of how I was going to leverage this in my life. And then the next day, I did the exact same thing as the day before. Because of the patterns in my brain, it really does take effort to make the change. But if I can do it, you can all do it.
Yeah, and I think, that is it. Like, it's okay if you're listening to this thinking, oh crap, I thought I was doing the right things. We've all been there, done that. And, life's a series of trials and errors. And so we share this amazing nuance because it's something that we've all had to learn the hard way. Sometimes we convince ourselves that collecting wisdom is the same as living wisely. But what we're trying to share with you guys is they're not the same thing. Okay, ladies, let's wrap this up. Let's wrap up our thoughts about this topic, this information versus transformation idea. What do you think is a simple truth that would sum it up for you?
Okay, here you go. Knowing better doesn't change your life.
Practicing something different changes your brain.
For me, I would say it's living it changes who you become.